We're Hasani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Thank you everyone for joining me today, midday. This is the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hasani Pettiford. Glad to have you all with us wherever you're tuning in from around the world, whether it is here in the States, maybe it's the Caribbean, Africa, Europe, Asia, wherever it may be, we're glad to have you. Listen, we started a conversation yesterday. We were talking about the things that your spouse does that makes you feel as if they're taking you for granted. We began the conversation. There was a lot of you who resonated with what we were talking about, but we didn't get a chance to get through that list. And I wanted to circle back around to make sure that we dealt with it in a comprehensive way today by really addressing those other key areas. And the hope was that you would have a conversation with your spouse and talk through some of these issues to figure out how you can get things back in alignment, back on track, and begin to value your partner in a significant way. So that's what we're talking about today. But before we get started, listen, September the 9th through the 11th, you know that is the Unearthed Retreat. Danielle is getting excited about all the women who are chiming in. They're excited. They're ready to go. It is not too late. There's a few slots left. Make sure that you get there, because how horrible would it be for you to see all the recap, the video, the pictures, the amazing time, and then say, man, I should have did that. Rather than saying, man, I wish I had, you need to be saying, I'm glad I did. So check this out, and we'll be right back. Hey guys, we're back. We're talking about being taken for granted by your spouse. Comments are coming in already. Questions. Ben asks the question, good morning. Catching this on my lunch while you're watching it live, my friend. What do you do when you have been taken for granted for too long, feeling my best bet is leaving? Yeah, I think a lot of times people stay stuck in these relational patterns and they're not being satisfied, right? There's no mutual benefit to the relationship. Maybe one is pouring into the other and getting nothing in return, or maybe both are in a stuck place and neither are giving. Neither are giving each other what they need. And so therefore both feel taken for granted. What do? You have a conversation with your spouse, separate from and different than the conversations you've had in the past, because a lot of times, if not set up in the appropriate way, if not set up in the right environment, it may feel like, here we go again. You know, it goes in one ear, out the other. Sometimes it takes creating the right environment for your spouse to be open to that level of dialogue. And it's all about how you approach the conversation. You know, here's the deal. If you feel like you've been taken for granted in your relationship, maybe one way to initiate the conversation is by asking your spouse, listen, in our relationship, have you felt like I've taken you for granted? Why don't you start with them? Because if you start with them, right, and you're inviting them into the conversation for them to share, to give you insight on how you're showing up, it will make them more open to be able to hear your concerns as well. This is one of the techniques that have been talked about in How to Win Friends and Influence People, how to get somebody to think from your perspective, how to get them on board with your particular agenda. It's all in how you deliver the messaging and bring it up. And so maybe your spouse feels the same way as well. That's worthy of a conversation. Based upon personality types, we kind of drift into our own caves, if you will, when we feel some type of way. And so oftentimes our behaviors reinforce a feeling and the notion that they don't care. And they may do, but there's a defense mechanism that's engaged. And this is what makes relationships so challenging. There's so many complexities involved, right? And so once again, having a conversation, not in an accusatory way, not in a finger pointing way, not in a you don't do this and you don't show up this way, because if you do that, it's not going to make them open to receive what you have to say. It's got to be delivered in such a way that allows them to receive and thus motivate them for changes to be made. So I hope that answered your question. But we're talking about the ways in which people feel taken for granted. Let's continue the conversation. Here's the first point today. Your partner doesn't make much of an effort to be romantic. Now, here's the deal. Romance was not something that you had to muster up the energy to do in the beginning stages of a relationship. It was natural. It was a normal, everyday part of that relationship because there was a sense of newness. There was intrigue. There was the getting to know. There was the in love feeling that lasted for a period of time. And in that space, you were willing to do whatever it took. We talk about the two personalities that exist within all of us all the time. You have the giver and you have the taker personality trait. And the giver usually shows up at the very beginning of the relationship. And the giver says, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make you happy, even if it makes me unhappy. Why? Because I love you. But what happens is when normalcy sets in and we get settled in our comfortableness, what happens is the giver, the taker personality comes out. The taker personality says, I'm willing to do whatever makes me happy, even if it makes you unhappy, because I love myself. You see? And so operating in either extreme is not good. Having a healthy balance between the two is good. But it's important for you to understand that both of you, husband and wife, okay, have to initiate romance in the relationship. For somebody to say, well, I'm just not romantic and that's just not who I am and that's just not what I do. Well, guess what? When you talk about the laws of what makes a successful relationship work, romance is a critical, important element of it. So when we're talking about emotional connection and sexual fulfillment and things of that nature, oftentimes the romantic component, which was there in the beginning, we feel like, not necessary. It doesn't take all of that. He knows how I feel. She knows I love him. Like, no, you've got to get beyond that and go back to the basics. These are the fundamental principles that establish connection and passion, right, and desire. And when for too long, there's no flowers anymore, there are no candies, there are no just because cards, there are no date nights, there's no chemistry, there's no atmosphere that's been created for connection, yeah, you do feel taken for granted. Because what happens is, we say this all the time, most couples kind of lean into their roles as partners, right? Okay, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, working jobs. You come home from a long day of work and handling all the responsibilities of life. And then when it's time to connect and pour into your spouse, you're just not interested anymore. And it's just like, well, good God, you give all your energy, your attention, your focus, your desire, your passion, your intensity to everyone and everything else. But me, yeah, it can make your partner feel some type of way. And so it's important that you begin to schedule time together to reconnect in your companionship. Companionship, right? Remember that? That's the relationship. And bringing back that feeling of romance. Yeah, doing it. And it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes it's the small consistencies of life that really make a difference to get you to an alignment. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Let's go to the next one. This is a basic one, folks. You know, your partner doesn't even ask about your day. Now think about it. We talk about this all the time. The average couple engages in about 4 minutes of conversation a day. That's according to US and UK statistics. You're on your job or in the field or in your business for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, connecting, communicating, building relationships, having rapport with so many others. Then you come home and have nothing to say. because you used up all your words. You're exhausted, you're tapped out. And so your spouse is getting your leftovers, not the best of who you are, the least of who and what you are. How unfair to your spouse when this is the person that you have made a commitment to do life together. You see? And so, your interests are for other things more than the interest that you have in your spouse. And a simple, how was your day? What does that really take? How was your day? 4 words. 4 words that invite your spouse into a conversation for them to share. Because oftentimes you have a partner who can't wait for their partner to come home. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to my husband and share with him what happened in my day. And, when I was talking to Susie and, what's going on over there and, the kids and what's going on in my own heart, or vice versa. That man wants to connect because for many men, it's not just about sex. They do want to connect beyond that as well. But you see so closed and you seem so busy and your girlfriends are more important that there's no time for him. Like, it is a need, right, to take the time to debrief at the end of the day and create sacred moments in time on a daily basis for you to share your life. Because most of your life is spent outside your home, separate from your spouse. And so you want to invite your spouse into your world by having dialogue and conversation that allows you to understand what is happening. Because we all have a public life, but then there's a private life, and then there's a secret life. And inviting your spouse into all elements of your life, of your world, really forms connection in a powerful way. Ben says, bomb drop on the first point today: romance, passion, and everything. Yes, very, very, very true. But all of these things are involved. And so here's the deal. Maybe when it comes to romance, it requires what we're talking about now: connecting, talking about your day. Like you have to understand the motive and the motivation of your partner. If there's things that you want him or her to do that they're just not doing, well, what is the source of their motivation that would cause them to want to do those things? See, that's going deeper beyond the surface. And oftentimes we don't take the time to do that. Many of us are just frustrated with the way things are and don't take a deeper dive or plunge into those areas. Let's go to the next one, guys. This is, man, I can't tell you how relevant this is. Your partner doesn't consider your feelings. It's just like there's such a lack of sensitivity and care to how you feel. Because I ain't thinking about you. You get on my first and my last nerve. You the last one I'm thinking about me, right? So what happens is, in relationships, when we're tired and sick and tired of being tired, we're spent. I've been trying and it hasn't been working. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to think about me. I'm going to protect me. I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to do what I want. So it now becomes me, myself, and I. And so the team of we is discarded. And now the focus is on the team of me. So I make decisions, not that I'm trying to ignore you, but I'm thinking about me. I'm not considering necessarily your feelings. And this is one of the challenges of relationships, because you're not an independent individual living on your own and can choose to do whatever you want regardless of what impact it has on others. Oftentimes in your decision making, you have to consider your spouse. You have to consider your children. You have to consider the feelings of other people. It requires that you shift the way in which you think. Does that make sense? So if I'm cooking dinner right now, I love spicy food. So I'm going to cook me up something delicious and put that spice up in there, right? All the Lowry seasonings, like all the stuff. But I don't even consider the fact that Danielle doesn't like spice. And so she's just like, this is a little bit too spicy. And I'm like, eat it or don't, right? That's my approach. Like, I don't care about her feelings. That would be insane. I've got to learn in this partnership how to accommodate my partner, right? How to consider my partner in all that I think, in all that I say, in all that I do, because we've made a decision to do life together. And when you think from that perspective, you give value, right, and worth to your partner instead of devaluing them so they feel as if they're being taken for granted. Let's go to another one, guys. Listen, your partner dismisses your concerns. Yeah. Okay, I heard you. All right, but I heard you though. All right, you done made your point, right? Or You don't even give space and room for their concerns, or you already know their concerns, but because their concerns are not your concerns, you're going to do what you want to do anyway. And you've already, some of you have already calculated the cost of what doing your own thing, regardless of how your spouse feels and regardless of their concerns may be. And so, yeah, he'll be upset for a couple days. He'll get over it. Yeah. She'll be upset for a day or so, but she'll be all right. Right? That's the approach that we take. Now, some of you may not be consciously operating in that way, but subconsciously, that's exactly what you're doing. And so this is why it is important that, and we talk about this all the time, the importance of having a work day. Because when you have your work day, you're able to sit down with your spouse and you're able to ask them that number one question, babe, how's your love tank? Remember the love tank conversation? If you think about your car has a gas tank and there's fuel that fills that tank. And when that tank is full, you feel confident and you're ready to go. When that tank is half empty, you're like, okay, I'm pretty good, not where I want to be, but I'm in a safe space. But when that tank hits quarter of a tank full, you're like, oh, I got to be mindful. I'm almost on E. And many of you in your relationships, you're on E. You've been on E for a long time. And you, there's no fuel, if you will. You are living and operating on fumes, not fuel. And you get to the point where you're ready to tap out, you're ready to call uncle or cry uncle, you're ready to throw in the towel, call it quits, just give up. You're vacillating back and forth. Do I stay? Do I go? Is it worth it? And you're thinking about all the things that may happen if you do leave. And because the consequence of the cost seems too great, you stay in a miserable relationship. You're not happy. You're not having conversations with your spouse. Things aren't going the way you want it to go. And so you just sit there and suffer in silence. Or maybe you're murmuring, complaining, you're yelling and screaming, you're hemming, you're hawing, you're throwing, you're tossing, you're breaking, you're all types of things. But yet and still, nothing begins to change, and you remain committed to doing more of the same thing that doesn't work, getting the same results. And then when we say, listen, try something different, you don't believe it's possible, you have no hope, right? You're helpless, you're hopeless, and you wind up doing nothing, and doing nothing reinforces more of the same bad behavior, getting the same results. And so this is why you've got to get to the point where you just can't take it anymore, and you are willing to do something, even if it's not the right thing. I'm willing to do anything that's different than what we've been doing thus far. And so when you try something new, when you seek counseling, when you go to an intensive, when you join a program of accountability, you will be amazed at the transformation that you'll experience in your life, in your world. And so these are the things that we're talking about, folks. We're talking about how your spouse takes you for granted and what you need to do about it. Listen, stay right there. We'll be right back after this quick announcement.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
Hey guys, we're back. We're talking about what do you do when you don't feel like you're being honored and respected by your spouse. You just feel like you're being taken for granted. We got a couple comments here. Jay says, my partner doesn't take into consideration my feelings and makes all the decisions for the family and doesn't run it by me. When she does this, she makes me feel less important. And this is, unfortunately, this is a challenge that many people have. It's just like, how are you gonna make a decision about the kids so important? Like, I don't know, just major decisions, and you don't even bring it up. Why am I finding out from the children? Why am I finding out because a call from the such and such came through and told me about something that was already done? Like, how is this happening? Like, I want to be involved. This is why, folks. I know it feels like this is trite. Hasani, you've said it 1,000 times, but maybe I need to say it until you actually do it. Like, your work day allows you to discuss the business of the marriage, what's being done with the children, how are we handling the finances, what events we have coming up that we need to be aware of, what doctors and dentist appointments, vacations, whatever it is, what things need to be done around the house. Like, you have to schedule time to talk through this, because if you're connected and don't really talk, and you're going this way, your spouse is going that way, and there's never really any time where you have dedicated to connect, then yes, you're going to be living independent lives in this thing called marriage, and you're going to feel discarded, dismissed, devalued. It's just not a good thing to have, not a good place to be in. So it goes back to establishing a culture in your home where you have color-coded time blocks on your calendar reserved for different things. Time for us as a couple to have fun and to work through issues. Time for us as a family to connect and build deeper dive relationships. Time for work, time for personal, time for time spent with God, my creator. These are establishing the priorities of life and mapping it out on a calendar and living your life by the calendar. That way you're creating space, room, and time for everything, not leaving anything to fall by the wayside. Micah has a statement. She says, sexual rejection. Okay, maybe he's tired, so there's tired sex or busy sex, and then boring sex, then no sex, makes not even women want to return in that way. How we overcome that? Well, you need to tune in to a Lakeisha Hines show, because every Tuesday evening she has a show called SOX, Saving Our Sex Lives. And these are questions that you definitely want to bring to her, because she guides through, people through that process. She's the sex coach on our team. And so, unfortunately, when we talk about the 5 biggest issues that couples struggle with is usually communication, finances, parenting, in-laws, and of course, sex. And sex may show up in a problematic way, in one relationship, but different in another. So some struggle with not enough sex. Some struggle with it's just boring, plain old, old shoe sex. Some struggle with duty sex, like we're having it, but it feels like an obligation. There's no mutual interest, passion, or desire. And so she kind of guides you through how to get to the root of those things so that you can turn things around and have a relationship that is mutually beneficial in a sexual way and thriving, okay? Then we have another comment. Woo, this resonated so deep in our relationship, my wife and I. Good, I'm glad you're tuning in. I'm glad you're getting something out of it. Let's go to the next point. Man. You never feel good enough. Now, here's the reality. Either you never feel good enough because, number one, internally there are some insecurities, inadequacies that you're struggling with. There's a message that you're telling yourself that's convincing you of the lie that you've held on to, because as we've said, a lie told 1,000 times is more powerful than the truth told once. And oftentimes we have a lot of internal dialogue. We're listening to that inner voice, and it is the voice of the message of the enemy, right? And it keeps stopping us and shutting us down and making us feel less than. But number two, it could be messages that you're receiving from your spouse. So maybe your spouse doesn't edify, your spouse doesn't uplift, your spouse doesn't motivate, your spouse doesn't encourage, your spouse doesn't speak life into, your spouse is speaking to all of the, deficiencies within you, all of the problems. They're very critical, they're very judgmental, they're what we would call breakers of men or women, like people who always have something negative to say. And so when you hear that, words become like daggers that cut into the heart of a man or woman and can make a man impotent, right? Can't perform in the bedroom because psychologically what's going on in his mind. Women oftentimes feel devalued. And I mean, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. My harsh words and my criticism for a period of time at the beginning of my marriage made my wife feel declitterized by me, right? Now, how in the world could a word that goes into the head declitterize her, which is, when you think about your clitoris, that's attached to your vagina. So oftentimes, I'm dealing with a couple now, right? So the husband doesn't have a desire to be sexually intimate with his wife. And when he tells her why, it's because of how you talk to me. It's because of how you make me feel. So there is a head, heart, genital connection. Oh, wow, that's deep. A head, heart, genital, whether penis or vagina, connection. And so the sexual aspect of my life is shut down because you have just attacked this particular area. Kind of speaks to the other statement about the sex issue, but we're talking about how, a person doesn't feel good enough. And oftentimes it's either what's happening within you or what's happening between you and your partner, or the things that they say and the things that they do reinforce the feeling that you already have internally within. And now you feel trapped in, I'm not good enough. And a spouse's actions and their words and their display can reinforce that feeling. This is why there's so much work to do, guys. So much work to do that you can't do it on your own. All right, the last one we're going to talk about before we wrap this show up is your partner comes and goes as they please. Where you going? I'm going out. I got stuff to do. What? Or you just leave and don't even let your spouse know. They see the car pull off, engine roaring, and it's just like, well, where'd they go now? We barely together when you here, and then you always in the street. Like, you can't sit home. You can't sit your behind down. You always got to be ripping and running and going here and doing this and doing that. Like, golly. Like, even when we're in the same house, I'm in the bedroom, you're in the office, we pass each other in the kitchen to grab something to eat, grab something to drink, and then we're separated. Right? There's physical proximity. We're in the same physical space in terms of a household, but we are as far apart as the East is from the West. How come we can't sit on the couch together? And even when we do, you on one end, I'm on the other. Here we are, we got this big old bed. We never touch, right? You on one edge of the bed like this, about to fall over for fear that I may touch you, and you on the, like, it's crazy. And oftentimes when there is a disconnect, we talk about how we go from soulmate to roommate to cellmate, because there's a disconnect. There's a wedge in between. And this wedge and this lack of a desire to reconnect makes a person feel as if they're not valued. We just coming and going. We don't do life together. We go half on kids, half on bills, half on life. Well, golly, I'm sick of having a half relationship. I want something that's whole and complete. I'm not trying to go Dutch. I'm an American. I ain't trying to go Dutch. I want to do life together. And until we begin to do that, I will continue to feel taken for granted. And so what we encourage you to do, have a conversation with your spouse. Talk about your concerns, not in a defensive, finger-pointing way, not in a contentious way, but in a loving way. And if you feel like these conversations do not go too well, you need to reach out to us at couplesacademy.org, set up a discovery call. Let's see what we can do to change your situation around. Guys, I hope that you got something out of today's conversation. I hope that you take the time to re-listen, to re-watch these videos so that change can take place in your life and in your marriage. Love you. See you in the morning. We're talking about your questions. We're answering your questions. That's right. It's Ask the Experts. Love you guys. See you on tomorrow.